Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. Actually, this episode comes from that server, so we take your ideas. Also, you can communicate with Heat fans all day long. Check it out, $2.99 per month. Get away from Twitter. Link is right here in the description on the podcast feed and on the YouTube channel. Also, check out the great sponsors, the Five Reasons Sports Network, our friends over at Water Cleanup of Florida. You can find them at WCUFL.com. WCUFL.com. Flooding, yeah, there's been a lot of that lately, right? You don't want to have a leak, too. Then it becomes really problematic. Reach out to our friends Michael, Robert, the rest of his team based in Boca Raton. They service the entire Tri-County area. They can take care of you beforehand. That's what we recommend. But also, they can take care of you afterwards, work with the insurance companies, clean it all up. Check it out. Water Cleanup of Florida, WCUFL.com. If you've got the schmutz,
they got the guts.
And now, today's episode.
Down the Biscayne.
Yikes. Five on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all band. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust. Inspire, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. I got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. Make sure to check out the last episode that we did. I tried to put a jinx on the Boston Celtics. It worked for one night. We'll see if that continues. Likely not, because I just mentioned it. But Alex and I went through it, and I gave my mea culpa about the Celtics and the fact that I said they would not win a title this year. And then literally everything broke against me. And so, that's, like I said, they're not excuses. They're just reasons. I gave you more than 5 reasons for that. But maybe by the time you listen to this episode, the Dallas Mavericks will have taken another game. We'll see. That would be nice. Although I know that some Heat fans, Greg, would rather it just get over with at this point. Like, let's just move to the offseason. Like, I feel it on playback, like playback.tv/5RSN. Like, nobody wants to watch the finals with us.
It's like delaying the inevitable.
Right, it is. Well, I'll say this. The Panthers did the same exact thing. I mean, they went in game 4 and going to close the thing out on the road and just decided to get blown out. I'm going to say they decided to get blown out. Pretty similar exactly what happened to the Celtics. So we'll see what happens in that series. But today we're going to talk about Bam. We were going to do this anyway. But then there was this, of course, photo that surfaced of him hanging out, not just with LeBron, but also with Dame. And then, there's this hysterical group of Heat fans. And I actually saw, I call him our friend Sean Hyken. I've known Sean a long time. But like, it feels like his whole game now is to troll Heat fans because he covers the Blazers. And of course, we were trolling him all of last summer. And then Dame didn't end up coming here. And so he basically tweeted, like, is Bam going to request a trade to Milwaukee now? So that's kind of where it's at. So we're gonna cover the Bam thing here from the perspective of do you think there's any way that he would ever move on from him? That we may address that quickly, or that he would ever want to go somewhere else. We'll address that probably even more quickly. And then, since I don't think either of those two things is going to happen, what would a Bam build look like if Jimmy Butler's not here in a year? Which is something that could happen because Jimmy has the power on that. He has, of course, player option if the Heat don't extend him. And actually, as soon as that Celtics series is over, the Heat will pretty much be in position to do that, I guess, by July 7th. So let's get to it. Let's get to the first question. Do you think there's any way that the Heat would trade Bam Adebayo in his prime, Greg?
Hell no. Next topic. No, there's just no way. They've basically, as the captain of the team, the carrier of the culture, they've in a lot of ways given the organization to him. So like, I know that there's an anxiety ridden group that, feels like, oh no, the superstars that we see Bam sitting next to didn't get to Miami and would he rather play with them, that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't let that get too far because for instance, when Bam was up for the max and they wanted to kind of wait for the Giannis thing to play out, they paid him. I think that they'll continue to pay him when he's, ready to be extended. And so I just don't see that as a viable option at all.
All right. So I'll give my view on this. In his prime, no. I think, again, there's going to be another extension coming up. I never say never about anybody since I saw Dwayne Wade go to Chicago. So, but again, it was an older Dwayne. And there was a lot of history there that had gotten a little ugly the last couple of years. I mean, people always forget what happened 2015 summer, which was, I mean, that almost played out the same way the 2016 did. And they had to, again, the Arisons invited Dwayne to the house, and Pat and Henry Thomas, Dwayne, the late Henry Thomas, Dwayne's agent at the time, got out of the way. And they got a 1-year, $20 million deal done, but it kind of lingered for the whole season, and you knew there might be an issue. So again, I'm never going to rule it out. Bam is not Dwayne. I think we've got to establish that. There's nobody who's ever going to be Dwayne, but Bam is the second best player they've ever drafted, and obviously he has been the carrier of the culture, and it has been. He was anointed by those who matter. He was anointed by Zoe, by Bosch, by Haslam, to a certain extent by Dwayne, and so. I'm with you on that. So the second question becomes, do you think there's any scenario, and let's put it into context. If you are someone who believes that the Heat have not done enough to supplement Jimmy Butler, if you're one of those, and we can have a long discussion about that because I think there are arguments on both sides of it. But if you are to be one of those people, could you make an argument that Bam has seen that? Because I think this is where the people on Twitter go. The Bam has seen that and said, and also knows that Dwayne didn't spend his whole career in Miami, etc. There probably been conversations to that effect. Haslam has probably talked to him in positive, but also realistic ways, because I know their relationship's very close. Do you think there's any way that he would say, you know what, there's going to be a better place for me than Miami someday to win big?
As long as this head coach is here, I tend to say no. I think that it's, again, a thing where if they're going to be able to pay him more than anybody else and provide an environment that at least is competitive or is attempting to be competitive with him at the forefront of all that, I don't think that he will look elsewhere. I don't think you can never say never. I think that that's an important part of all this conversation, but ultimately, this is an organization and a player that seem tailor-made for each other. And so for now, things always can change, but for now, I just don't see any sort of split between the two either way.
Right. I think that's fair too. I don't really see him getting to that point. I look around and I'm like, there's very few there's very few places better than Miami to begin with, right? Not just organizationally, but it's Miami. No state tax, whole bunch of things along those lines. You're in the easier conference, at least for now. We talk about that cycle. That cycle has not changed in the past 20 plus years. It's a year after year after year. It's the same thing. So I don't see it either. I think that they would reassure him in a number of ways that they will do the proper things. I think he's more likely to believe them than not. So I don't see that either. So I'm with you on that. I think I think that these are sort of irrational concerns born out of frustration of inertia over the past couple of years. And I don't, the Heat go through various build periods, and sometimes they're more active than at other times. And we could get a flurry of activity this summer. We don't know at this stage. And also, I think Bam is open to anybody coming or going. He's seen some of his best friends move on, like DJJ, Gabe, etc. Then they bring back best friends like Josh Richardson. So I think probably that is a concern that is overstated. All right, when we come back, we will talk about, though, what a Bam build would look like. I want to talk about a couple great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Our friends over at Better Edge. Use the code 5RSN. That's the code 5RSN. Get $20 to play right away. What's different about Better Edge than the other books? There's no VIG. That means basically that you're not giving away money to the house. It is legal in the state of Florida. We run our contest there as well. So go to betteredge.com, use the code 5RSN, and find the line that you want. Also, check out Prize Picks. Use the code 5FIVE, legal again in the state of Florida. using that code, you get your initial deposit matched up to $100. You can set your lineup up to 4 players. Use the power plays. Again, we know we're entering sort of a slower season, but they do have MLB, MMA, MLS, and more on Prize Picks. So check it out. Use the code 5. All right, Greg, let's pivot to this, okay? Jimmy Butler could move on in a year. He could be traded this offseason. And basically, like, as we look at it, we're not really sure what the plan is long term. We don't know if Jimmy's going to get an extension. I have said over and over that I think that ultimately, Jimmy will, either get the extension or probably opt out after one season, and they'll get the best of Jimmy Butler during that time. But they could also trade for a player who fits Bam's timeline better. Bam's 27, sort of on entering his prime, you could say. Jimmy obviously going to be 35. Do you see a scenario where they pivot?
I mean, if the Jimmy thing comes to a head, they'll have to pivot, right? And I think most Heat fans, the optimistic view of the Jimmy Butler scenario, if he has to leave and you need to still find the good in that, would be if he went out the door and another reasonably ranked superstar came in his place that fit Bam's timeline. I think an important part of this also is that it's a pairing that works for Bam on the court and optimizes all the things he does well. I think they need a pick and roll partner for him. It needs to be, if you don't have a Jimmy level player, it can't just be Terry Rozier and Tyler Hero in the backcourt with Bam. Like, they're going to need to elevate there. So that's, I think, where my head goes when I think of, post Jimmy. It's find a backcourt guy, a really reliable, prolific scorer, because that's just another part of Bam being relied on to do so much on defense. I think you need to continue to funnel offense to other guys and look at his offense as incremental to what you're trying to do, at least to some degree. So to me, it's finding the next player to go alongside him, a Donovan Mitchell, a De'Aaron Fox level player. I'm not saying him because I don't know that he's available, but like those types of guys are, I guess, the next wave of players that I would look at to pair with Bam.
We talk about De'Aaron Fox or others. I mean, one conversation we had was somebody like Lauri Markkanen, right? Like, if you were to empty, everything right now to get Lauri Markkanen, you would have some pivot time, right? Because you bring him in and then you have to make a decision. Okay, are you going to extend him? You trade for him. You probably are going to extend him at $50 million something dollars. You'd have Jimmy Butler, if you don't extend him under contract for close to that amount, along with Bam for 1 year. You kind of see how it goes. And then, if Jimmy leaves, you're pivoting around Bam and Markkanen. The thing is, my thing about pivoting around Bam, okay, is you are going to have to get an elite offensive player. Like, that's the key to this. Okay. Like, we've gone from talking about, okay, you got Bam and Jimmy, and then your third guy needs to be a really good offensive player. You need to find, someone who can carry, because I just don't think with everything, regardless of what we talk about with Bam's ceiling offensively, with everything he's asked to do defensively, the idea that he's going to essentially be Giannis, okay, and carry that, I think we're past that. I don't. There's too much responsibility on his plate. There's always going to be. And so you need a natural scorer. Bam can be a very good complementary scorer. At times, he can be a lead scorer. I don't think he's ever going to be at the point where he's going to be a lead scorer consistently. And so if you're going to pivot around him, you need to find that guy. Now, De'Aaron Fox, that's an interesting name. Obviously, there's a lot of relationships that Bam has that could be leveraged here. Mitchell would be ideal. That looks like Mitchell's going to re-sign where he is. Okay, Dame would have been ideal for a very short period of time, but not really on Bam's timeline. Do you see any scenario where they can get someone even younger than Bam?
That's an interesting one, especially if they end up moving Tyler Hero. Like, let's just say that they think that it's time for him to have a new start elsewhere. There's scenarios that people have floated about. Do you target someone in the draft and then you kind of take the clock back on your build considerably? I think the more rookies you add to the roster, the less you should think that you're in contention, at least to some degree. I know that might not make every fan feel great, but usually young teams are not the ones making deep playoff runs. So I don't know how much younger of a player, because also this is another part of this. You got to wait for the right situation to make itself available. And right now there's not a ton of those guys out there. So you're right in terms of like with marketing, maybe you have a bit of a bridge. Maybe you need to start thinking about players in that ilk, whether it's DeJounte Murray, if you think that he's got enough upside. Look around the league at other guys that you think could, maybe shake free. But there's not a lot of names that just pop up. I mean, is Brandon Ingram a name that really that jumps off the page as a player next to Bam? I don't know that it does. So you start to run out of options, and then you just have to build the best team possible. And at that point, it may become more prudent to bring a lot of young players in. And then is Bam going to be patient enough to go through that process? So I think there is some delicate balance that is worked here. I don't think you can go too young.
Yeah, I don't think so either. The problem, again, of course, is the young players are going to be under contract, right, with their own teams for a period of time, relatively cheap. I think that a lot of this is going to have to be Bam working hand in hand with the organization too. And we talked about kind of Dwayne working hand in hand with them. And it does feel, again, there are back channel things that can be done. I don't think, first thing, like I said, I don't think the pivot is coming this year. I think Jimmy will be here, extension or no extension. And I think that, again, a lot of this depends on what they move beyond that. Like, does Tyler get moved for other pieces that fit Bam? I'll say this, okay? I have been against the whole idea of, well, Bam is a center, Bam is a power forward. But when I saw the on Twitter, this concept here, well, not concept, but the list of guys 6'9" and over who started next to Bam, and how weak that list is beyond Jovic, who is a still developing player. They need to get more size. It doesn't have to be a 7-footer that forces Bam to play out on the perimeter. It doesn't. They obviously had a spacer at 7 feet in Myers Leonard, but he was a journeyman type player. They need to get more overall size. I think the key to this is whatever the build is around Bam, they need to take burden off of Bam. They need to take burden off of Bam so that he can be at his best. He's done some things they asked him to do, 15 shots or more. He got to that, all the rest of that. Okay. But we've seen last year shots per shot attempts per game per month declined every single month. That's not coincidental. So I'll let you close on that. Like a Bam build, what would be your expectations? Like, what is the upside of that?
You'd have to build another title contending team and hope that the defensive principles that come with a Bam Adebayo led defense is enough to at least have a foundation for a roster. And then you have to bring in that 3-level everyday scorer, go get a bucket. There's no screen needed. All those funny things that we talk about. You got to go get that guy, whoever that guy is, to complement Bam. And then go with the trends of the league, finding bigs, functional size, as everyone wants to call it now. That's the kind of stuff that I think are the basic principles that are going to reshuffle the deck and make a roster that could make a run. But that's a lot of stuff that you're shuffling up here. So I think that it is, I don't think we should put the cart before the horse in terms of this happening. I think that this is more in theory than anything that they're going to have to confront right away.
All right, we'll get some more of this as we go forward. Again, check out the recent episodes. The one about Boston, like I said, hopefully that holds off for a little bit longer. We'll dive into this more, but we just wanted to kind of set the table. We're going to discuss it more on Discord. What would a Bam build look like? Also, we're going to start our draft series. Starting this week, we're going to start reliving previous Heat drafts. Did they make the right decision? How did they get to that decision? We'll try to give you background on all this. We're going to cover a lot of drafts from the Wade draft to the Beasley draft to the Jaquez draft. All of those drafts. We'll do some of them here and some of them on playback. So make sure you download the playback app and look for the 5 Reasons Room. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.